Hey everyone, in this video I wanted to go ahead and talk about Square Enix's past week of game releases and just how bizarre game publishing ultimately ends up being with greed is the focal point of your decision making, especially when some of the games that you are putting out are actually good. So we need to remember that on March 3rd, 2022, Babylon's Fall released to glowing reviews, as I say sarcastically, on the PlayStation 5, I believe the game is also on PlayStation 4, and on PC via Steam. The game is currently right now a 40 on Metacritic. Also, Chocobo GP launched on March 10th on both Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and maybe even PC. I haven't necessarily confirmed that. And the game is doing pretty decently well when it comes to reviews, with a big caveat when we're going to talk about monetization. And then, of course, we have Triangle Strategy, which also released on March 4th and is currently exclusively to the Nintendo Switch. But if this game does follow the path of Octopath Traveler, no pun intended, then presumably in about a year this game will appear on PC, and maybe even a year later will also appear on Xbox. This is presumption, we have no confirmation of that, but if it follows the same developer's path in the past, you could see this game in other consoles in the future. So let's talk about the bad first, because this is always the most fun part. Babylon's Fall is a really bad game and an ugly looking game, and it didn't need to be that way. This is of course a Square Enix published game, but it's also made by Platinum Games. The same combination also worked on games like Nier Automata, 2017's second best game of that year if it wasn't for Breath of the Wild, which is an amazing game in its very own right. But I think Nier Automata, for me personally, at the end of the day, ended up feeling more memorable because I wanted to play that game more, and I ultimately enjoyed it way more. Years later down the road, when I kind of got over the whole Breath of the Wild thing being really good, I kind of just mentally thought that Automata ultimately played out to be a much better experience overall. So we've seen this same combination work on amazing games, but Babylon's Fall is anything but that. Ultimately, the very first time that they showed it, I believe it was on a State of Play presentation or some PlayStation event, whatever that was, and it was just shown as an action RPG, presumably from Platinum Games and published by Square Enix. So like that out of the gate was a really great combination. And then they showed it again, and then they talked about it being free to play. And it was like, oh, that's a warning. You don't necessarily want to hear the word free to play in an action RPG. And then they started to put out developer videos on it. And the more they spoke about this game, the more criticisms people started to levy against it, because nothing about it seemed to be fun. They spoke about how mechanically it was just kind of like you were going to be having base attacks, but then develop them as you continue to play. And then there was like all these really weird grindy mechanics. There was only like 4 specific classes you were going to start out with. All these basic dumb decisions that just provide you to do more and more grinding, where live service games essentially live at, in order for you to be able to log in every day, check in your little daily bonus, and then they keep that thing going forever. And it's just not realistic when it comes to just having a good polished game that just works. That's just not necessarily the way it's supposed to be. And ultimately, now the game released, the reviews are just destroying it. No one's playing it. I think it's like sold like 4,000 copies in Japan. Here I saw the Steam numbers. I think like day one there was like 500 people playing it. It's just like no one cares about this game. Reviews are bad. Square Enix messed up big time. You shouldn't be doing that. Live service games are not good. And this was on the heels, remember, of that Marvel's Avengers game or whatever. So that wasn't good. So releasing one bad game a week can be overlooked if you didn't do it again the following week, or like within 7 days. And that would be Chocobo GP's problem, where the game, from what I'm seeing, like, is actually fun. People are actually enjoying it. And this is people who play the free-to-play version. There's the free-to-play versions full of gacha and stuff and really bad like monetization. And then there's like the $40 version, which is supposed to be like the full game, but then when you look at it, it has season passes, it has gacha, it has like you can buy level ups, all this like really mobile-esque monetization that at the end of the day isn't going to make anyone happy. Like, you don't want to pay $40 for a game and then they're telling you, oh, by the way, if you want to level up, pay some more. Like, it's just, none of that makes sense. If it was a free-to-play mobile game, I'm not going to complain about it. We all understand by now in 2022 that free-to-play mobile games are monetized by them making you either grind forever so you can do those stupid daily logins, or you pay to be able to become powerful. That's just kind of like the way it works. But when it comes to like a fully priced game or almost fully priced game, you shouldn't be making people do that. And ultimately, the game seems to be fun. It seems to be actually mechanically sound for a Mario Kart clone, but it simply has terrible monetization ideas behind it that isn't making anyone who wants to play it happy. And I think ultimately these two games specifically, Babylon's Fall and Chocobo GP, showcase just the bad side of Square Enix. The same Square Enix that's willing to put the Final Fantasy 1 through 6, what are they called? Remakes, remasters on like PC only, but they're not on consoles or for whatever reason. This is the same Square Enix that's going to put out things like Balan Wonderworld and like the weird decision to make Kingdom Hearts collection on Switch Digital. Like, these are just terrible decisions that this company makes. Let's not forget Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which was terrible. That was like a really, really bad game. So, you know, it's just the bad decisions that Square Enix makes almost end up surprising almost no one because they just keep doing them over and over again. On the same side, on the flip side of things, we have the good Square Enix, where they put out games like Triangle Strategy, which is an amazing game. I can't stress that enough. I praised it in my review. I gave it an 8.5. I think it's one of the best games they've put out when it comes to strategy RPGs in a very long time. Yes, they're refusing to put out Final Fantasy Tactics. They don't want to make it because they probably think if it doesn't live up to the expectations, they're gonna get crushed. But at the same time, they're putting out games like whatever that Chaos Final Fantasy game is. So, you know, even though it's made like by like Koei Tecmo, but it's still published by Square Enix. So, you know, whatever. Like, they don't seem to care about Final Fantasy having bad games. So even if they make a mediocre Final Fantasy Tactic games, I think it would still be okay. But Triangle Strategy is great. You know, they're following that up with Field, which is releasing later this year. This is just the good side of Square Enix. At the end of the day, oh, Valkyrie Profile Remake or whatever that is, a new game, Elysium, I think it's called. That's also good. But like, Triangle Strategy is a great game. In the same week that they put out two bad games, Babylon's Fall and Chocobo GP, and I just don't understand it. And I think it should be pretty clear by now that Babylon's Fall being a live service game, bad idea. Chocobo GP having mobile microtransactions and like season passes and stuff like that, when it should just be a straight up Mario Kart game clone or whatever it is, and just make it a racing game that's just one price, one set, and then just purchase it and you're done. You don't have to pay anymore. That's fine. But they decided not to do that. And then we have a pretty straightforward strategy RPG and Triangle Strategy, which is just, here's a straight up experience. Go enjoy it. $60. End of the day. I guess the only real argument you can have against it is that it's on a Nintendo Switch. It's an exclusive for now. And if you're a PlayStation fan, you can't buy it. If you're an Xbox fan, you can't buy it. If you're on PC, I guess you could pirate it, which I guess is becoming more popular with Steam Deck. But other than that, like, you know, that's the only real criticism you have towards that game. Everything else Square Enix has done this entire past week with Babylon's Fall and Chocobo GP, bad decisions. The good decision, Triangle Strategy, an actual good game released without any of the other nonsense. I don't understand if these publishers will ever figure it out, if they ever will like actually get over their silly greed and then just put out a good game and just let it be for what it is, which Chocobo GP should be that. It should be just a good game that they put out without any silly monetization, and it should have just been that. Whatever the original vision of Babylon's Fall was supposed to be, that could have been a good game, but they decided against it, and they decided to make it a, you know, live service game with some free to play stuff or whatever. There's just bad decisions all around. I don't quite get it. Where, you know, if you put out a straight game like Triangle Strategy, it should be able to sell on its own merits, and if people like it, you're gonna have people like me talking about it and telling everybody else to go check it out because it's a damn good game. It's worth your time and certainly worth your money. So I just wanted to quickly talk about Square Enix's past week, which I think was a really up and down one. I think ultimately at the end of the day, no one is ever going to remember Babylon's Fall because no one actually played it. So who the hell is going to remember something no one ever played? I think Chocobo GP is just a really big miss. And at the end of the day, I really hope that they kind of looked it over and then they realized, let's remove all the gacha, let's remove all the season passes, let's just make it a straight up experience. I know they're not going to do that, but it would be smart if they were to do that and ultimately at the end of the day, you know, make it a straight up experience. And Triangle Strategy, man, just go check it out. It's such a good game. I can't praise it enough. And I hope eventually down the road it does come to PC and even Xbox, because, you know, the game just needs to be seen by more people. I don't think it's going to sell as well as Octopath, but I hope I'm wrong. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.